The United States only bombs countries that don't have air forces or that can't fight back. And the United States isn't the only country that does it, but boy, we do it. We do it. We bombed 7 countries last year. So what is happening is the changing face of military is going to drone warfare, and the Trump administration, but frankly the Biden administration before them, is pumping a lot of money into drone development.
Welcome to The Whole Cow. This is a space where we talk all things food, farming, legislation, and land. I'm your host, Emily Kitchler, and today we are here again with our guest, who is an environmental lawyer who has really done work that runs the gamut. In our last episode, we talked about the environmental degradation and pollution that is happening as a result of industrial animal agriculture and some of the legislation that has gone into that, some of the legal battles that have happened there, some of the things that just won't happen or can't happen because of the scale of this industry. If you haven't checked out that episode, please do. There is so much information packed in there. And today's episode, by contrast, we are talking about something very different. We're talking about an AI drone weapon manufacturer, which, when we're talking about AI weapons, we're talking about weapons that have the ability to kill without human involvement, really. We're talking about weapons that are able to be programmed with somebody's identifying information, and then the drone can find them and execute them without a human having to push the button to do that. We're not talking about weapons that have been used before. We are talking about a new set of weapons that are incorporating AI, that are targeting buildings that used to be military headquarters, that are now schools, that if a human was operating that all the way through, they would have been able to identify that and stop that from happening. So in this episode, we get into a lot about this manufacturer, but we could really go worlds deeper. So I do encourage you to check out the resources that we have linked below. And even just having this awareness, even just holding the space for this reality that is a part of where we are in humanity right now is a lot. And being able to hold the space for anything that is actionable in this arena feels tangible. And so that is really what I wanted to offer here with this conversation today, and really at the heart of the work, all of the work that our guest is doing in his day-to-day life that I really appreciate and respect. So without further ado, please welcome Terry Lodge. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
It's good to be here.
So when I first met you, you were giving a talk on Anduril, and you were there with Veterans for Peace, and you said that you were an environmental lawyer. How do these areas connect? What is your affiliation? What brought you into both of those?
Well, I've been practicing since the late 1970s, and I'm from the anti-Vietnam War generation. So my sort of ideological roots are anti-war, and one of the greatest environmentally destructive things that human beings do is to conduct war making, which of course involves a whole continuum of plundering of raw resources, ultimately for the manufacture of weapons and the training of people who use them destruction is the ultimate aim of war, and it is a thoroughly messy, dirty, and often poisonous process, even before things get to the battlefield. But so it actually, for many people in my generation, especially some of the other environmental attorneys I know, it was an easy shift of gears as the Vietnam War wore down for people who were going to law school to get into environmentalism. There was a great deal of sort of first-time passage of federal and state statutes at the time, and there was finally some enforcement and recognition of some of the really horrible manufacturing and other environmental insults and damage that had been going on in many cases for decades. Coal mining, mining of all sorts, was a terribly, terribly dirty and dangerous work. Many aspects of heavy industrial manufacturing, which the United States really burst into in the early 20th century and throughout, created a great deal of environmental pollution, industrial disease, a lot of things. And so the movement gathered steam in the post-World War II era and finally resulted in the passage of what initially were seen as pretty strong, unprecedented federal statutes governing air and water quality, nuclear power, and pesticide usage, that sort of thing. So it was very much Ralph Nader, who is a guru to many in my generation and hopefully many others beyond that, was young and becoming very renowned for his public stances and his insistence that lawyers take a more public interest perspective. And the phrase Nader's Raiders, Nader co-founded or initially was the founder of a number of nonprofit organizations that were aimed at improving Food and Water Watch types of activities, but he was not a founder of that organization. But basically, he did focus a lot on changing agricultural practices and trying to introduce some environmental responsibility into a lot of industrialization of agriculture. So, yeah, that's kind of how I ended up, because a lot of people my age that were going to law school at least started out in that direction.
So Anduril is an AI drone weaponry manufacturer that is setting up a facility over 400 plus acres, is that right? In Ohio. There's kind of a debate as to whether some of the land is even legal for them to use. There's AI drone weaponry is an insane combination of things. Just bad at every level.
Sure. What you're talking about is this proposed industrial complex on the southern edge of Columbus. It's right actually at the boundary of Franklin and Pickaway counties. And it is to build the largest so far drone manufacturing complex in the United States. Drones, we're sort of at the same stage, I think, with drone technology as sort of the first 10 years of the 20th century were with respect to the development of the automobile. You had hundreds of manufacturers. You had experimentation going on of all sorts, and it gradually, things sifted out and bigger fish gobbled up smaller fish, and General Motors came into being, and those sorts of things happen. And then you end up years into it with these huge complexes. Mm-hmm. And I think Anduril is very possibly going to be one of those. It is at the intersection of all of the negatives that are part of our environmental collapses, the coming ones and the ones that are ongoing right now. And drones are replacing piloted aircraft. This is what the gamers have been dreaming about for decades, I guess. And that is that essentially robotic warfare becomes, we have less and less human skin in the game. It's also very illusionary because what the Empire is doing is killing poor people in many, many places around the planet. And, you're basically you're using infrared systems and missiles and drones and all kinds of high-tech means of killing people with rusty rifles in many cases, or with simply themselves and whatever firepower, whatever they can do to resist. That's what our contemporary warfare is really about. The United States only bombs countries that don't have air forces or that can't fight back. And the United States isn't the only country that does it, but boy, we do it. We do it. We bombed 7 countries last year. So what is happening is the changing face of military is going to drone warfare, and the Trump administration, but frankly the Biden administration before them, is pumping a lot of money into drone development. So Anduril was founded by a little group of billionaire investors or near billionaire investors. Peter Thiel, who was a co-founder of Palantir, which is one of the largest surveillance tech companies in the planet, really helped pull things along. One of his disciples, a fellow in his 30s named Palmer Luckey, is the actual nominal CEO, and I guess a pretty bright, creative slacker. But again, it is remarkable to me, these folks come from gamer backgrounds, and they have my impression, and boy, Peter Thiel is really a weird fellow. He has very strange philosophical points of view, and Palmer Luckey does too. Palmer considers himself to be a very big patriot, and he's sort of he wants America to be defended at whatever the cost and all that, when in fact it's not defense that we're really talking about. The American paradigm is offense, is bullying and threatening and conflict. That's why he's developing both submersible waterborne drones as well as airborne. Robots. These are mainly, don't think of them as drones, but as robots. So the Anduril factory is going to rely on considerable installations of computers in artificial intelligence complexes, both for design and development and manufacturing supervision, but also for targeting and for developing the instructions for them to fly. Some of the things they talk about, and it's so science fictional to me, is piloted aircraft what they're talking about in the near future is they will take off with squadrons of robots and robotic planes. And just imagine a scenario where they're attacking and you give the digital instruction for half of the drone squadron to peel off and go bomb this or that area, and the others are held in reserve, and it becomes a very remarkable complex of war with very little threat to human life involved. There's also a great deal of...
Will you clarify what you mean
Well,
when
I'm
you say
sorry.
that?
We, the American Empire, will not suffer much loss. We only have one or two pilots, involved in raining hellfire down on thousands of people.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, an awful lot of the future of warfare is Gaza, is the experimental and advanced and truly heinous and frightening nature of what the Israeli military is wreaking, and not just on Gaza, it's throughout the region. But so, and in fact, one of the major drone manufacturers on the planet is Elbit Systems, which is Tel Aviv based. Anyway, so Anduril is.
And what you're talking about specifically with Gaza, you're talking about like facial recognition technologies and things like that.
Yes, and yes, but also they are constantly using drones to take images. They actually are tracking the movements of people through Palantir's technology, where, for instance, they concentrate their attacks or decide on their targets based upon where cell phone GPS indicators are. They don't just track you by your phone number, they track you by, or they make decisions about attacks based upon being able to, with confidence, predict that there's a huge concentration of people there that we want to bomb, or there isn't, and our selected targets are sort of accessible right now, that kind of thing. But it's the means by which this is happening are just scary. I mean, the Israelis have assassinated hundreds of journalists, of course, many doctors and medical personnel in general, other select targets, military leaders, of course, but civic leaders, and academics. There's a high proportion of academics that's involved in the destruction of the university system in Gaza, and almost all of this is a product of remote sensing and data analysis, file churning of a very high-tech sort. It's slowly coming out in the media how this is being achieved, but you also have to understand that we all know. I mean, in the checkout line at the carryout, for $60 you can buy a drone. Okay, and there are drones that are as small as the palm of your hand that can fire bullets. I read the eerie and terrifying story of how doctors were saving a baby in one of the crumbled surgical rooms at one of the hospitals in Gaza.
One doctor told me about a drone that hovered into the surgical ward, such as it was. Hard to call it a surgical ward, but they did have a stainless steel table and a white cloth across it, and they were working on a young baby. And the drone hovered over the table, looked at the baby, consulted some mosaic intelligence Palantir planted into it probably, and then zapped the baby, killed the baby, and turned around and looked at the doctors like it was going to kill them too. And of course they were frightened. But that's what they're living with. This is horrendous what's happening. They tell me that some of these people have not eaten in such a long time that they are losing their mental capabilities to deal with life. They can't be saved by being fed because they are incapable of resurrecting biologically their bodies. They've been starved for so long, and that is just absolutely horrendous to watch. A person who can't even eat or drink water because they're gone. They're literally gone, just waiting to die. And how many of these people they've encountered. And these doctors have been in and out of Rafah and Khan Yunis and places like that almost since the beginning of this Holocaust. And they still say they're seeing things they just can't believe.
I was just horrified. I circulated it a couple of months ago, I think. So anyway, what you have is this need, incredible competition. Incidentally, the Ukraine-Russia war is another big battleground where drones are playing an ever-growing role. I mean, constantly new and changing. So to build these things, of course, requires the panoply of plastics and petroleum and rare earths and rare metals that computers require. And
they're coming out of Africa.
Yes, cobalt, coltan, yes, lithium.
Furthering
absolutely
what's going on in Congo and Sudan.
And which is, and also mining is very deadly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and yes, and it's being, starvation, mining is a long time habit in all of these former present colonies. So there's that, as well as the fact that you have to have AI farms, you have to have computer farms out the wazoo, and something you haven't directly mentioned but is being pushed along by this is the attempts to induce a new nuclear power renaissance of so-called small modular or advanced reactors that will, because the energy requirements of artificial intelligence are enormous. And I'm truly shocked at the kinds of projections. What's happening is that our electric rates, as consumers, we're being pitted against this sector that is spiking. It requires enormously more electricity, and the grid is not currently outfitted for the type of growth that we're talking. We're talking about doubling it within 10 years.
That as well, in the US, I don't think that people fully grasp how much electricity we already use compared to other countries,
right.
And the fact that our energy bills are relatively speaking low, and so our use can be very high by comparison.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to try to say this in as concise a way as possible, but I really just want to clarify. With all the graphs, you can extrapolate so much, but when I say that we pay relatively little in the US for energy, what I mean is, sure, when you look at countries in Europe that are paying more per kilowatt per hour than us, you can say, yes, we're paying less for energy than them. But what I really mean is that in developing countries around the world, the proportion of money that is going towards an energy bill, if their cost per kilowatt per hour is about the same as ours in the US, they are paying a significantly higher amount of their income on energy than we are. So they're thinking about it a lot more than we are. They're using a significant amount less than we are because it is more of a burden on their dollars than it is on ours, even though in the US, people can't afford to pay their energy bills now. But just thinking about it from the global lens, even if you try to look up what that rate is of what that percentage of people's day-to-day costs are going towards energy in developing countries, it's very hard to find. What you do find is a lot of talk and research about increasing amounts of green energy in developing countries, which is great. However, and I'm not saying that this is 100% the reason that is the research that comes up when you try to look into this more, but I do think that it's in our consciousness that we know that to continue to produce more energy in the world the way that we are producing it now is not sustainable. So when we look at people who might have the opportunity to increase their amount of energy use, we're like, oh no, well you can't mess up the planet. That's our thing. So putting the responsibility of developing countries to have electricity in a way that is done right, as opposed to putting that extra emphasis on ourselves where we are using the most, doing the most, have the highest amount of responsibility to do that, but that's not where our focus is. So anyways, just wanted to add that to the conversation. And so when you're talking about doubling that in the U.S., and the U.S. is huge, that is a lot of energy consumption.
And I mean, there are projections in Ohio that within 3 to 5 years, our electric rates will be 40 or 50% higher than they are now. That's way ahead of inflation. And I mean, just in an old-fashioned practical way, the poor and working classes who have the least ability to cover their utility bills and all their other expenses are going to hurt a hell of a lot more.
Yeah.
So there's that problem, but there's also the fact that the technologies that are being considered and experimented with for the next generation of nuclear power reactors, some of the technologies have actually been discarded in decades ago as not being safe or practical means of generating electricity. And I have been a very active anti-nuclear litigator since the 1970s, and I am aghast at how you have to educate every new generation as to how there's a direct connection now between nuclear power and nuclear weapons. And look at what we're doing with nuclear weapons. In less than 4 weeks, the last major treaty, the the START treaty, New START, is going to terminate, and that is the only limitation on the number of nuclear weapons that Russia and the United States have agreed to limit themselves to. So there will no longer be a limit to how many nuclear weapons we have. The Russians have made a few futile attempts to try to engage the Trump administration, and before that, the Biden administration, into renegotiating and extending the treaty, including China, which is going bonkers building nuclear weapons. But all I'm saying is that, so the war material industry is now at the intersection of multiple serious, really big deal, environmentally damaging trends. When you're talking about AI and the raw materials for computerized society, and the enormous energy consumption that goes with it, as well as the destruction of the earth for lead, for bullets, for the metallic and other parts that go into weaponry, and the plastics, the petroleum, etc. I mean, it's just endless. And I am gratified that there's a movement that is growing in Central Ohio about this. Presently, as you alluded to, there is some zoning problem. I'm not sure that it's going to be enough to hold up construction, because what is also happening within the Trump administration is to classify AI centers as a national defense priority. And the Ohio General Assembly generously last June, in the biennial budget bill for 2025, passed a zoning override that mega projects, which is the term they use in the law, which, if you read the law, it defines artificial intelligence centers as well as large factory complexes. Anyway, mega projects that meet a certain list of criteria are basically exempt from any challenge to zoning. Yes. Now, and it's sort of funny, the little guys, the little people who want zoning changes for, I don't know, for you name it, want for small retail or small factories or whatever, have to deal with the possibility of not being exempt from zoning requirements and having to deal with them. But the big boys that are bringing in a few jobs and a lot of tech, they don't have to worry about it. So, and I have been trying to figure out where this mega project legislation is going to affect the zoning controversy over Anduril. Right now, the trustees of God, what is the name of the township? It's the northernmost township in Pickaway County, where there's about anywhere from about 85 to 185 acres that have to be rezoned industrial. And so far, the trustees have voted to allow the zoning. And normally the people would have the right of a referendum to circulate petitions and vote on whether or not the zoning change should be allowed. But this new law appears to exempt Anduril from that. But there are people that are trying to make a stand, and they've held a public information meeting in the township, trying to, I think, environmentalist types and anti-war types, urban people, OSU people, for instance, have come together and are reaching across the normal divides to try to get farmers and small town people in central Ohio to line up with them against Anduril. Artificial intelligence centers, data centers, are a huge environmental threat. There are, 268 or something like that in Ohio, maybe more. I noticed there's one under construction about 3 miles away when I was driving in today, here in Sandusky. They don't produce jobs. They use an awful lot of electricity. And frankly, a great deal of what they want artificial intelligence for are not positive developments for us. They are more surveillance techniques. More data will be gathered and can be processed more readily to fix on our habits. We are going to be beset by a lot of authoritarian stuff that we will have very grave difficulties keeping from happening to us. So I think that, and it's just like I say, it's amazing. 3 years ago, nobody was talking about this huge environmental threat for which we need to develop tens of billions of dollars worth of new nuclear reactors, for which we need to keep coal plants open, which is another thing that's happening. There are 2 major coal plants in Michigan, one that's about 15 miles north of the border, north of Toledo, that are going to be kept open indefinitely now. And that means more mountaintop removal mining, more destruction of mountaintops for coal in Appalachia, and dirtier air, and all of the other things that are happening, that the heating of the planet that's being induced by that.
It's so wild that we are still so heavily reliant on coal.
Yes, and the direction is to become even more reliant on it. And I might add, our supposed major competitor, China, is developing coal mines at a phenomenal rate, even as China is ascending to the largest manufacturer of wind and solar technology, which aren't going to save us at the scale that they're doing it anyway.
When you say China is developing that, is that within China that they're
opening
mines?
Yes, opening more coal mines and importing. They've just closed a major deal with a company in Australia for coal. So yes, and I mean, humanity, well, what's going to happen is that we are, I think, going to accelerate the collapses in a huge way.
I mean, when I hear about any developments going on in China, what my brain goes to is they have, what is it, like 3 times the population of ours?
At least 3, maybe 4.
Yeah, and the fact that they produce so much is so wild. And coal mining takes up so much space and energy and pollution, and it's like I can't even imagine all of these things coexisting. It's really wild.
Yes, and yeah, I have in the past been involved in representing protesters against mountaintop removal mining, which has destroyed literally 500 mountains in Appalachia. 500 mountains.
Wow.
I mean, a great deal of West Virginia is uninhabitable because of mountaintop removal mining. Because what you do when you eradicate the geological layering of the mountains is you expose a great deal of acid and other chemistry that runs into rivers and all that. I read about 10 years ago, I learned that outside of, is it Charleston maybe? That the Charleston city water system has extended pipes out 4 counties in a couple of directions because those counties are so destroyed by mountaintop removal that there is no drinkable water. Not well water, not rivers, nothing. And we're talking about, I had thought that we were at the end of coal, and we aren't. And we are going all in, like I say. Nuclear power, incidentally, is a big contributor for a lot of reasons to the climate chaos.
So to really bring this full circle, what you are talking about here with coal mining, with the ecological effects of that, with the continuation of it, with the push forward, is, and you said wind and solar isn't going to save us at the rate that we're expanding. So when you're talking about building out an AI drone weaponry facility, that is a case in which you're talking about we are using more resources. We're in need of expanding our energy production in order to support these facilities. And in this case, this is not a case where individual consumption is going to make a difference. We cannot, boycott our way. I mean, we can still boycott, Palantir adjacent companies, but that only hurts so much. This is a case where this is so largely out of our hands. Aside from really a legal fight or.
Oh yeah, yes. This is a societal choice that's being made for us. I'd also like to point out, a couple of weeks ago, the president announced that he is going to be seeking a $1.5 trillion defense budget for the next cycle, which is happening now. And the current budget is just under $1 trillion, which is a phenomenal amount of money.
Yeah.
1.5 trillion will be the United States spending more on defense than all of the other countries in the world.
Combined.
Everybody on the planet. Yes. Number 2 through 191. Yes.
Yeah, and I mean the rest of the spending that goes into anything else in this country is like a drop in the bucket compared to that. I mean, that is such an insane number.
And incidentally, I point out that the justification for that amount of money is principally AI and drones. and the nuclear weapons program, which is being expanded because this treaty isn't going to be renewed.
I'm going to add the grains of rice
Yes.
video to...
Brava, Husky Muskie. In an extraordinary display of absolute gluttony, unfettered greed, you are now set to be the world's first trillionaire. And in honor of that, I really wanted to bring back the demonstration that I did last year. For those of you who might remember, 9 months ago, I made a video that went viral showing the visual difference between $1 million and $1 billion. I used a single grain of rice to represent $100,000 scale. And here's what that visual looked like in terms of size and scale. At the time of making that video about 9 months ago, Husky Muskie's net worth was around $400 billion. So it would have been 400 piles of that rice, equaling $1 billion. Now, thanks to his shareholder payout and all these estimates, he is projected to be a trillionaire. And I really wanted to show you that as a visual, but I can't, because when I thought about it, 1 billion equaled about a cup of rice. This canister here only holds about 10 cups of rice. I would need 1,000 cups of rice to show you what $1 trillion looks like. So $1 trillion is 100 times these canisters. So think about it that way. 100 times this canister is a trillionaire. And this right here is a little millionaire. So when we say tax the wealthy, I'm not talking about these guys, though they should be taxed appropriately as well. But someone who has the net worth of 100 of these, who, if you saw in the original video, could literally solve climate crisis, hunger in the world, not just here, and still be a billionaire. Like, it should literally say something that I have a Costco-sized bag of rice, and I still do not have enough rice at my house to represent in scale what $1 trillion would look like.
You know,
Yes.
illustrate this. That is so
Right.
so absurdly upsetting and
Sure
just
it is. And I mean, we are very much at the pushing at the outer limits of what the Earth can sustain and what we can fiscally manage. And I mean, at the same time, you know, it's the same old story. Every dollar you spend for war is one that you're not spending for healthcare, education, poverty, cultural development, you name it, everything.
anything to create peace.
Correct. The things that would allow others to live in peace too.
Mm-hmm.
We are increasingly an aggressive and warlike society, and that's what I'm saying. We have to make some decisions because, like I said, all of this war-making stuff is an intersection point now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is AI, it is all of the consumption and destruction of mining and raw material use and development and plunder, and energy making, and it's all happening. What? So we can bomb more effectively? I mean, what is the objective here? We haven't been and won't be given any objective for why the hell we're in Venezuela. Mm-hmm. We aren't going to be told the reasons why a lot of this stuff, the bombing of Nigeria before Christmas. I mean, wow. And of course, we're enabling the genocide.
Yeah, and there's not as much secrecy anymore about it. Like they don't
even make a pretense.
Right, you know, when you're talking about there's no reason, there's no like justification that's going to be given about Venezuela. It's like, well, yes, they have oil. What other justification do you need?
Correct.
And I mean, that's the case in every war, but usually there's a justification along with it.
Right.
There is always a reason that we are somewhere. There's always a grab to be had. Otherwise, we wouldn't be out there saving the lives of people or whatever is like touted to people who go into the military and think that they are protecting our country or you know, protecting something. They are a part of a system that is, you know, brainwashing or just outright telling people at this point that we need these resources for ourselves and we just need to go out and get it for ourselves.
And take it.
Yes.
Yes, and I know I'm stunned at at the complete lack of even attempting to justify in any terms other than raw power
Yes.
the decisions that are being made supposedly on our behalf. I'm very, 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 very troubled at the state of our politics, and that's why I'm saying that, yes, there's a need for people to develop urban agriculture and to lobby and agitate and make models of their own lives about so many things.
Mm-hmm.
But we are at some decision points that all of us have got to at least be aware of. If we don't weigh in activistically, we need to be aware and to talk about it and to understand that we're being driven over a cliff. We don't have any means to stop the driver.
Right. So is there anywhere that you would suggest people to go to stay updated on what's going on with Anduril?
Yes, we have at the Ohio Nuclear Free Network, which is an organization I'm a member of. We have an Anduril page at our website, and with fact sheet and with a lot of sort of backgrounding kind of information. That's onfn.org, because it would be great if additional people would turn out. Mm-hmm. This is important, not just about Columbus, but for all of us. What an amazing time we live in.
Yeah.
I told people I'm having it's like an intellectual feast for activist law. I mean, I am daily in Zoom.
A never-ending buffet.
Yeah, it's a never-ending buffet, but it's poisonous.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
horrible. This is end of the world kind of stuff.
Yes.
I mean, I can't imagine being your age and trying to figure out what kind of future this translates to.
Thank you.
I really, and it's horrible. A friend of mine says that when he's a retired prof, and he says he goes around and apologizes to everybody younger than us.
Yeah.
Wow, that hurts.
Yeah, no, I mean, the future of the world is like, it is such a deep act of hope to produce more life in this world.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
There is no guarantee of what the future is going to look like, for sure.
And it's funny. I mean, so I lived through the anti-Vietnam War stuff, and there was unfinished business. I mean, that was their first great awakening about the environmental debacles, and I mean that period of time, the late '60s, and there were changes made, there were reforms made, there was some accountability, and I'm watching it all go down the drain with everybody doing the laydown for the Trump administration, and led by the Democrats, I might add, which is scary as hell. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and that's the changes are going to have to be forced by grassroots, and some leaders are emerging, and that's great, and certainly devoutly to be wished. But there's so much that we should have dealt with 50 years ago that might have effectuated changes, but
yeah, and I mean so much that would have been easier at that time to initiate and everything. Yes. I mean, to do it at this point is very, very challenging.
Yeah, on the brink.
Yeah,
on the brink in the in the last few rounds left to us. I'm simply aghast at it's not. I completely anticipated that Trump would be reelected because of the paranoid and fascist impulse that is so emblematic of our culture. But I was a lot more hopeful that there would be pushback of a higher level type sort amount than is seeming to happen. It's happening. People are catching on. But it's not. Every time I see Chuck Schumer on TV, I just want to reach into the screen and beat him up within an inch of his pitiful life. I mean, I can't imagine. These people have no shame. And what happened to Minneapolis? Look, they can kill any of us. They can shoot any of us down. And instead of backing off and doing anything that looked like soul searching, they doubled down. They're sending in more of these sickos. You know, a lot of these people, a lot of the ICE officers are Proud Boys, and they all have guns, and they all have way too much testosterone. This is really horrible. And there's going to, and sooner or later, I'm going to have mixed feelings about it. Sooner or later, they're going to pull over or attack or tackle somebody with carrying a concealed weapon who's going to blow a few of them away. And then what will happen? Pathetic. I keep telling people that I've now become convinced that George Orwell was an optimist.
Wow.
He did not anticipate he did anticipate sort of futuristic technology and surveillance and all that, but could not have, or at least didn't foresee the insidious ways.
Maybe Fahrenheit 451 was more accurate.
Yeah. Yes. And is going on.
Well, anyways, we have depressed the people too much today, or I should say enough.
Yep. Yep.
So, thank you so much for being here.
It's very interesting to meet you, and thank you for taking an interest. I mean,
Of course.
I got some very good insights into where your head is at with some of the things you're saying. I mean, you've really done some homework.
Yeah.
Is this like, I mean, are you, how long have you considered yourself to sort of be an activist in this sort of stuff?
I don't know. I hardly, well, I don't know.
I'm just curious because it's always interesting to me what clicks people in, what finally turns you into this.
When I was writing this, the paper that I've referenced throughout this about the pollution,
Right.
Like I said, I've been vegetarian, vegan for a really long time, and for a lot of that, I've been pretty passive about it, not, trying to. I'm just like, oh, I'm just doing my thing over here. Not that I won't speak up when prompted in a conversation or something, but just seeing that the devastation at that level and really knowing that something desperately needs to be done about that.
Yeah.
I was just like, all right, I need to start this podcast. That's that avenue. Everything else has its own little sparks.
Yeah. Well, as I say, these end times are bringing everything into intersections, and in a way, it's sort of easier to identify the war machine than it was, and it's certainly the genocide has exposed. I am just aghast at what it has really told me about human nature, but also the assumptions that we are to now make as to motives and means and control and all of that.
And the manipulation in storylines as well. I mean, having conversations with anyone who has been defiantly against the Trump administration and sort of people buying into this narrative that they are going to be helped, or it doesn't matter, at the cost of whoever, whatever. And of course, none of that help is true. Like
Right.
people are going to experience devastation, like wherever they are, through these pathways. But then to like not tie that to what is going on between Israel and Palestine and the Israeli lobby and the insane power of it that it holds, and the narratives that are created at such a scale and that have been, you know, used for decades now, you know, for myself included. And it's very unfortunate that this genocide is what really like sparked the prompt to lean in and learn more.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It took that. I know.
And there are people who have been speaking out about this, researching,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
for decades, and
warning that this was the inevitable. Yeah.
yeah.
I know. And it is one of the craziest things, because until it ends, I mean, until something really awful happens to Israel, it will not end. That is the problem. I'm serious. They are not swayed. They dodge and weave and, you know, adjust to ceasefire, knowing that they're manipulating Trump like crazy.
Oh yeah, I mean it is the what is it, the dog is walking the
wagging the dog.
Yeah.
And also, I mean,
Tail wagging the dog.
yes, we're very possibly going to have a horrible existential war involving Iran. They're going to let everything fly, and that's going to cause a lot of damage in Israel. It will, but it's horrible. It's all horrible. It's just, like I said, when I first arrived, I was talking about the protesters the Iranian military and police are killing hundreds of protesters, but there were 100 police killed by lynching and mobbing and stuff like that in the first 3 days. So it's horrible. I mean, completely off the hook, nuts. And Israel is financing or backing a great deal of it, and so are we. God, can't stop. Talk about addiction. So I don't know. And like I said, the one thing I've learned from the genocide is I used to debunk conspiracy theories. You know, I used to just tell people, you know, there's some obvious explanations here too. And now it's like everybody has an ulterior motive for everything. And it's always dark, and it's always destructive, and people are going to die from it. God, what are we?
Yeah, the loss of soul and humanity is just so pervasive. I mean, reading this book about narcissism being an addiction to feeling special, or like, you know, you have an addiction to being right, or an addiction to power, and that is, and at any cost, like, you need to have that, and it doesn't matter who is hurt or how along the way. It doesn't matter how manipulative you need to be in order to get what you want. Like that, you're totally on it. Like the addiction is wild, and to pull back at that level is like impossible unless there is, you know, an acting force, and even then, how does that all go down?
Yeah, and then to see the numbers of billionaires who just kind of figure that by virtue of being a billionaire, they get the unadulterated right to dictate what happens to the world.
The means by which, the processes by which all of this has to happen, which should be so simple. You know, from the beginning, it's just like, the UN has. I mean, the UN didn't have to call it a genocide before that. Like that took so long before that took so long in itself. Yeah. But like, it was just like, you know how this ends. Like,
Yeah.
like you need to be like charged for war crimes, and
It's obvious. It's evident.
and it's just sort of like, why can't we just cut to that point right now?
Yeah.
Why can't we just stop all of the devastation and just cut to that point, like from the beginning?
Yeah.
Like from the initial retaliation attacks.
Okay, so there's not really a great way to close up this segment. Terry and I just kind of said our ending and then kept talking and then sort of just started packing up our things. And I thought it would be nice to include some of that. But yeah, there is not a great way to close out this segment. What I will say is that you might see media around building and operations around Anduril, and some of it is just gas, okay? There are some articles that are circulating now saying that Anduril are going to start manufacturing 3 months ahead of schedule, and it might be the case that they might start some production, but it is not the case that they have built out everything. They are still not legally permitted to build on a chunk of the land that is touted for this project. And so there's that information, which is not to say that they haven't won out on a lot already. Farmers have been pushed out of their lands, bought out, pushed out, some combination of those. And we're talking about plans that can have devastating effects, of course, for our international family. And the way that that comes back to us is in higher gas prices, higher costs of living everywhere. There is no upside to war. And what's amazing is that we can continue as people to sort of gaslight ourselves into believing and going along with these things that are ultimately being forced on us, because it's easier in some regards to go along with something that is being forced upon us than to say, no, actually, I don't like that. And now I'm in the position to either carry the weight of that or push against it or, what have you, work around it, go through it. And there are people who can say things like, well, so many innovations came out of World War II or came out of this war, or came out of that war. You can't deny that. And no, you can't. However, who knows how much better those innovations could have been if we had just focused our energy and resources on those. Who knows where we could have been as a society today had we not put the primary focus into destroying people's lives and livelihoods and homes, and what kind of profit could be made from that. We do not need to excel any more at war. We do not need to do it more efficiently. We don't need to do it better in any way. We are very bad at peacemaking, and we need to put a focus into that by whatever means we can, because there is a lot that has been forced on us, that is continuing to be forced on us, that is as a result of stuff that has been forced on us over the trajectory of a century, multiple centuries. There are so many timelines that bring us into this moment, and somehow it will need to break, it will need to end. And so we need to figure out what those pathways are. And even just by being present in this, in shouldering this information, one, thank you so much for being here and being present and for paying attention. You are not alone in that. And shouldering that is just the first step to really being rooted in the reality of the world that we live in today, and being able to take steps forward in the reality of the world that we live in, not in any sort of illusion that we've painted because it's easier or more comfortable to not have to think about what is being forced upon us. So I promise that the next episode is going to be not this dense, okay? The next episode is a lot more of a positive, momentous thing, and something that is very near and dear to my heart. So I'm very excited to share that one with you. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you again next time.